Hi, this is Bill Cecil, and welcome to episode number 29 of my podcast series, Best You Ever or Bust, the podcast series designed to help make every year as a teacher your best you ever by helping you help your students make it their best you ever despite any and all challenges you encounter throughout the school year. Best you ever or bust, baby! That's the mindset I've been trying to help you adopt and adapt, if you haven't already, to work for you each school year to take on any and all challenges to help your students have their best year ever, which then helps you have your best year ever. As always, I want to take time first to thank you for being the hero you've been called to be, and you're striving to be each day you walk into your classroom to make a difference in your students' lives. It's so important. I'm telling you, and today you'll understand why it's even more important, hopefully, in today's message. But thank you very much for doing that. And also, thank you for those of you that, I don't know if it's summer now or not because it's after May here. Now we're into June. So many schools I know are on summer break. But if you're still working and taking time to also listen to this podcast series, man, I just can't thank you enough for taking time out of your busy schedule, especially at the end of the school year. I know how crazy that can be. And if you're in your summer break and you're listening to this, oh my goodness, does that say something about your dedication? But anyways, I want to thank you as well. And finally, I just want to thank you for any of you out there that are taking time to share this with other teachers, and that includes administrators that are taking time to share this with teachers. It means the world to me because one of my goals by doing this podcast series was to try to reach as many possible teachers as I can, and I need your help to do that. So thank you very, very much for that as well. Okay. I think I've mentioned to you before, but my goal is to do 30 episodes in this series. And this is number 29, which means this would be the second to last episode. My main goal is I want to finish off this 30 episode season of Best Year Ever or Bust, because this is what I set out to do. I really wanted to find a way to give back to teachers that are still teaching, to help, like I was helped by so many other mentors along the way, and coaches and people that just took the time to, give me little nuggets of information or a strategy here or there or something to think about that really had huge impact in my career. And so I wanted to do that for you. And so I based a lot of this off my Best Year Ever book, Winning Strategies to Thrive in Today's Classroom. And so I am hoping that, you will pick up a copy of that and use it as your playbook like I did each year in my classroom. But regardless, I wanted to give you some information that you could use. So this, you don't have to buy the book to be successful, but hopefully it will be something you'll be interested in wanting to read more about it. Which goes with today's episode, because today I'm going to be talking about two of the last strategies that I talked about in my TEAMS acronym that I've been talking about in the last few episodes. And so I've already talked about Target Talk. I've talked about environment. I've talked about all involved. And then today I'm going to talk about the last two strategies in my TEAMS overall year approach, the strategy that gets us to the moon and back. Basically, the mission is to keep the team functioning all year long. You're not going to have a big blast off and then do nothing with it. You want to keep this going, sustain it all year long. This was the part that's going to help you sustain it all year long, the TEAMS acronym. So today I want to talk about model management and service. And these don't take as long to talk about. And partly because I'm not going to go through so much of what's in my book on this, because I think I've gone through it. I was going over my notes, and it looks like I've gone through a lot of this in the previous episodes in one way or another. Like, for example, in the book, in model management, I talk about clear expectations, rules and consequences, respectful, fair, consistent, being positive and proactive, and the importance of modeling, which I'm going to talk about some of these today. But I'm going to start off today by, first off, talking about one of the best compliments I ever got as a teacher. I'll never forget this. We were walking down the hallway one day. I can't remember what year it was, but it stuck in my mind, and it came up again this week when I was thinking about this podcast series, or this episode. And what happened was I was walking down the hallway with my line, and I tend to walk to the side of my line so I can look down the line and, slow down and not stop the line, so the line can keep moving and I can move up and down the rank of the line when I need to, just to encourage or to make quick corrections or whatever. And let the kids see me. I want them to see me. And if I'm in the front of the line, a lot of kids in the middle and back can't see me, so they think I can't see them. So it's just a smart move. So anyways, I'm walking near the front of the line, but I'm, like I said, to the side with the line moving. And all of a sudden this student comes running up next to me, or she's kind of hustling to get up next to me. And she goes, and she's out of breath. And she goes, "Mr. Cecil, you walk so fast. You're hard to keep up with." And I started laughing. I said, "Hey, we're on a mission. Come on, we got to go. We're walking with purpose." And immediately I took that as the highest compliment because that's something that my father was known for doing, especially when he was at work. And so I want to talk a little bit about my dad today. My dad was a huge inspiration in my life, and just like my mom and dad, by far, I think, were the two greatest teachers I've ever had. I wish every student could say that too, and I hope many of them do. But my mom and dad had the biggest influence on my life in so many positive ways. But my dad, I'm going to talk about today because this goes with how his line of work. My dad was never a teacher. He never taught a day in his life, and he didn't even go to college. But he made sure we all went to college. That was his goal, his and my mom's goal. All of us were going to go. In fact, my mom even went back and got a degree. But my dad, even though he was never a teacher, I believe he had some of the biggest impact on me creating Best Year Ever and the way it is and the way it's organized and what I was trying to do. So I want to talk a little bit about this because he was the king of model management and customer service. And so I had the opportunity to go watch my dad at his work a few times. It wasn't like a take your kid to work day officially, because now we have that, I guess. I remember students would come in on that day. But this was where my dad just said, hey, get in the car. Come on, you can go with me today. I'm going to go to work. And it was like on a Saturday. He said, come on, go with me. I want you to see, what's going on. And we'll stop and maybe we'll have lunch afterwards. I'm like, yeah, okay. It was like alone time with my dad, which was really cool because he traveled a lot. And he'd be great about when he came home to go out and play catch with you or shoot baskets with you and stuff like that. But, I didn't get to see him a whole lot. So he's like, come on, go with me today. To give you some idea or give you some background about my dad, right out of high school, he went to work for Sears in the stock room. It was in a little town called Owensboro, Kentucky, it's not so little anymore, but it was at that time. And so he would stock paint and whatever else he stocked in the stock room, but that was one of his first jobs. And he rose all the way up to, before he retired, without a college degree, mind you, he worked his way all the way up to the National Director of Sales and Marketing, which was located in the Sears Tower. But at this time, when he took me to work a couple times, he was a district and a regional manager that would go into the Sears stores, and he would work with the appliances like washers, dryers, refrigerators, things like that. And I remember we'd walk into a Sears store, like we'd be in the car talking and listening to music a little bit, not talking a whole lot. And my dad was kind of quiet, but as soon as we got to the store, all of a sudden it's like he transformed, like that Marine did in my classroom. He transformed where all of a sudden he looked more professional. He just all of a sudden he's like, okay, you ready to do this now? Remember, you're going to give your best in there, and I'm going to be talking a lot, but I want you to listen in, and then if you're good, I'll take you down and we'll get something to eat. Okay, so give these guys a good impression because they work for me, and I want them to see that you're well behaved as well. So I'm like, okay, Dad, I'm fine, I'm good. This is going to be fun. I'm going to enjoy this. So we would go walking in, and he would walk so fast I'd have to literally jog to keep up with him. And I'd say, Dad, you never walk this fast. He says, I'm a man on a mission. Come on, we got stuff to do here. We got to get my sales team fired up. And he called his sales crew his team. And so that just stood out because I like team. I was a baseball player, things like that I've told you about. And so he'd say, so we're going to go talk to my sales team. So let's get in there. Come on. So keep up, and so I would keep up with him. But then as soon as he got there to the floor, he immediately owned his space. And that's something that, leaders have to do. You have to own your space. You have to be seen as somebody that's walking with a purpose and that you own your space. And own your space means, I learned this from public speaking. You have to go in and speak to the back of the room. You can't just speak to the people right there in front of you. Sometimes you have to own the entire space. So you should get there early and see how big it is so you get it mentally in your mind. Once you're there, you should feel comfortable. You should look like you're comfortable speaking in front of that audience so they can relax and listen to you. Same thing. Your students want to see that you're in control, that you're relaxed, that you're confident. And same with my dad's sales team at Sears. He had to go in there like he was confident, ready to go, relaxed, because he knew what he was doing. And he did, because he did his homework. He was a prep guy. He worked hard. And so that was another thing that he taught me about model management, is you got to be the hardest worker. If you're the leader, you got to show the people you're not afraid to roll up your sleeves and work just as hard as they are, and that you're prepared because you want them to be prepared. So you have to model everything you want your team to do. You can't just assume you can go in there and tell them to do it. You got to lead by example. So my dad was, like I said, the king of model management in that respect in my mind. So we would go in, and I remember immediately that he was huddled with a circle around him. They would get excited to see him. They would all say, hey, Mike's here, Mike's here. Hey, Mike, how you doing? And they would come up immediately to him, and they were so excited. And I wondered why they were so excited to see him. And I would say to that to him later, Dad, it's like you're giving away candy or something, man. They like you. What's going on? He goes, oh, what's my more money coin? And I'm like, what's your more money coin? And so he gave me one. It was this little gold coin, and he gave it to all of his sales team. And he told me later what he used it for. It's what it is it gives them an idea of what our goal is. I gave them a coin that has our goal on it, which is to make more money by selling appliances really well. And so for them to do that, we want to do it individually so they get more money, because when they sell, they get more money for each sale they make. But we also want to be the winning sales team in this district, or in this region. And so I'm trying to motivate them to go for it, because there's incentives with that. And so the coin is a reminder of that. And on the coin, I gave them things to think about to help them sell more, that will help them make more money for our team and for them individually. And his 3 words were, just to throw them out at you, I won't go into big detail about it, but they were sincerity, knowledge, and energy. So he was training me at all this at a very early age. It's no surprise, one day when I decided to come up with my plan to have a coin, I went to my dad and said, Dad, I liked your coin so much. I want to have a plan for my kids. And so he helped me actually design my Best Year Ever coin, which I haven't talked a whole lot about, but it was a big part of Best Year Ever, in that I'd give one to my kids on the second day of school if they committed to giving their best, just like my dad had his sales team do. And they had to master the words on the coin in order to make the goal a reality. And the same thing in my room, which was attendance, attitude, and effort. So they knew that they had to do all 3 of these words to be successful, and that's what he was holding them to. And so that was one thing I remember about being with my dad. But then I also remember during these meetings, my dad would meet with the whole group and they would get them fired up. And he wanted to make a way to make it fun so they would look forward to seeing him, because it's not just coming in to check up on them. It's like when a principal just comes in, you're like, oh boy, are they here to evaluate me, or are they here because they really want to be here? So anyways, he made a deal with his kids, or with his team of salespeople, that I thought was cool. And that was, they knew that he could pop in at any time. He wouldn't give them a warning ahead of time, because then it wouldn't be a game. It wouldn't be a challenge. So he encouraged them to carry their more money coin with them every time they came into work. Just like I told my kids, you should bring it to school every day, keep it in your backpack, keep it in your desk, someplace safe. Maybe not in your pocket if you're going to go out and play football and it's going to fall out and you're going to lose it, right? But you should have that coin in case you need it to remind yourself. And so he did the same thing. He said, you should carry that coin with you, because when your hand goes in your pocket, you'll remember the coin. You'll remember what the 3 words, you'll remember what our goal is. You'll remember to, do your best. And he says, but to make this interesting, what's going to happen is if I ever come in and I ask you if you have your coin, because sometimes I will and sometimes I won't ask, but if I do and you do have your coin and you show it to me, I will give you $1. And it was just kind of a fun game. They say, or you can go down and buy me a cup of coffee, or I'll go take you down to buy you a cup of coffee, or whatever. But he would give them $1. And so it became kind of a fun game just to see if they had their coin. And he would do that every so often. What was funny was that the other side of that was, well, if he asked them and they did not have their coin, they owed him $1. And so it was funny, because so many times I would go with them and I would see people digging in their pockets like they're already giving away that they had their coin, or they were looking for it. But the ones that he knew were giveaways were the ones who were like, hey, Mike, you going to ask us if we have our coin today? And he's like, if you're asking, you probably have it. So I don't know, and so, but he would always asked for coins, and he was always giving out way more dollars than he was taking from them. But it was a fun way for them when they saw him coming in that, oh, this is a chance to get a free buck off Mike. It was more of just beating Mike, and in a fun way. And so that was a way he connected with his team. And that's what you want to do on your team, model management and service, right? Customer service. He's even treating his employees like they're his customers because he wants them to keep coming back and wanting to see him and to enjoy working with them. And so he made it interesting. And that's what I've been trying to tell you to do all year long with your students. And so anyways, so that was the part I always liked. He would always, just play with that coin and make it something really interesting by having them come up and talk about the coin or him finally asking, and they got so excited they all pull out their coins and he'd laugh, so. What's interesting, though, is that what I was picking up from my dad at this time, none of this registered that I was going to use it someday. I just remember observing, watching my dad, because he's my dad and he looks like he's a superstar. He would meet with them in a huddle and they'd all kind of get excited, give him a pep talk. Then he'd tell them to get back to work, and he'd come around individually and touch base with each one of them privately, just see how they're doing. And if he needed to talk about something to help give them some advice or tell them, they need to work harder in a certain area or whatever, they would do that. But he would do that individually, and then he'd pull them back one more time and tell them what a great team they were. He'd always encourage them and always praise them and tell them how proud he was to be working with them. And then he'd, pat them on the back or whatever, shake their hands, and then he'd be off. And I just walked back with them, and in the car we would talk about some of these things. But what was happening was I realized now that I was learning the importance of my higher calling that I was going to adopt as a teacher, which was to use my leadership position in the classroom to take time every day to uplift, motivate, and empower my team of students, His were salespeople, but my team that would help them to believe in me as their leader, but more importantly, to believe in themselves and to believe they can and will achieve as a team. So he's trying to get them to believe in him as a leader, more importantly, them as salespeople that can be successful, but also to believe in their team, that they're working together, right? It's a support system. But they knew they were working collectively towards something as well as to individually strive for their best. So on the way home from these stores, it was just always fun to listen to my dad, because he would always kind of come back and try to, I don't know if he's trying to teach me or if he's just excited, but he would tell me about why he did what he was doing. And customer service was something that he would bring up all the time. And I'm like, I don't know what that is, Dad. And he'd say, well, it's like when you go into a store, it's how you're treated. Do you feel good or do you not feel good? And so he was telling me basically that he wanted his employees to treat their customers with such respect. And he said the only way he could guarantee that to happen or feel good about that happening was if it started with him. So he always wanted them to know that he treated them really well and really encouraged them. Didn't mean he was a soft touch. My dad had high expectations. Also a trait of a leader. He expected the best and got the best because he told his team when they needed to get their numbers up. But he definitely told them in positive ways. He didn't say, you guys are embarrassing me, or this is going on, or what's going on, these numbers. He's like, okay, so let's talk about what isn't working. What are we, who's having success right now? What are you doing differently? Share with the team, we're a team, let's do this. He was talking about how you got to treat your employees just like your customers with the same amount of respect. You got to provide customer service for your employees as well as for your customers. And so he was very customer service driven, which I think is pretty cool. And I'm going to talk more about that in just a second. Some ways that I try to be customer service driven in my classroom. He would always show us that even as a family we got to eat. He would tell us when he was happy with the service or when he wasn't. And when he wasn't, it wasn't very pleasant for us because he'd be really upset because it frustrates him. He's like, they are representing their entire company and this person comes in and they're just, going through, they're being glib is what he was basically saying. Penny Owen, right? They're just being, not that she's glib, but that's her word, that, they're being glib. And that upset him because he says, when you represent a team, something larger than yourself, you have to go in there and represent everyone. And so if you come in and don't do your job well, you're representing all of them that maybe they don't do well. So you're hurting the team. He was such a stickler on that. And so that's why customer service was so huge to him, as well as don't judge a book by its cover. When I sold appliances at Sears, before I became a teacher, the year that I was still looking for a job. And so I said, I'm just going to work at Sears because, my dad, I know what appliances are and it'd be fun because he always seemed excited to be around there. So I went in at our local Sears store here that was in East Lansing. And I remember he'd always say, now, don't judge a book by its cover. And I would have salespeople that sometimes I was working with would say, don't bother with them, Bill. They're not going to buy. They're not going to buy. You can already tell. They're just looking, or they see how they're dressed. They don't have the money. So and I would be like, no, I'm going to go up and talk to him just to say hello, because those were the 3 words on my dad's coin, And so the energy and the sincerity and just the whole spirit of make them feel welcome into the store. And so I was doing that. And I'll tell you not, sometimes I'd come back with a huge sale and the guys would say, I can't believe they just bought the end cap, the most expensive washer and dryer we had. What'd you do? I said, I was just talking to him, and the wife said her husband was going to buy tools, and she wished she could buy this. So when he came back, I just said, your wife said she'd love it. And he laughed, and we laughed, and then he said, well, let's take a look at it. And next thing you know, they're buying it. And so you never know, just like I talked about with Bob Reisner earlier on in one of these episodes. So my dad was an amazing influence on my career. And the reason why I'm telling you all this is this. You model the way every single day in your classroom, like it or not. If you're aware of it, that's great because you can go in there with that in mind and think about what you're doing. And if you don't, you could be modeling things you really don't want to be modeling to these kids, right? Or to your students or to your team. And so I talked about earlier in one of the episodes about the 3 types of students that I would show my kids that come in the first couple of weeks of school. One's upset and says, teach me. What are you going to teach me? And bad attitude right off the bat. One's bored, always bored. They're going to be hard to teach. But then I have the kid that comes in like, hey, what's going on? It's going to be a good day. I'm looking for good things to happen. Mr. Cecil's starting. I love this class, right? Do you remember all that? And how I would get them all to transform more into that. But I'd model that to them in a funny way to kind of get their attention, but then talk about how important that really is. I told you too, I think, that they told me one year about teachers that would come in, and I had a group show me the 3 types of teachers. One that came in angry and said, "Get up, sit down, just don't bug me, I've had a bad day," versus one that comes in like just sits at their desk and always like, "Okay, this is how I talk, monotone. I don't really give you any personality or personal stories, or I don't try to make it anything other than let's just get through the curriculum," whatever. And then you have those that they're engaging, that they're interested, they're taking time to get to know people, they're building relationships, they're a part of those relationships, they're excited about learning, they're modeling, they're excited about learning. It's like I tell people when I would go out and speak, I would say, students, they're like little butterflies. I worked in an elementary building. They're like little butterflies. They spend more time with us during their waking hours than they do their own parents each day. And so they're watching us, especially in the elementary school, because they're in our room most of the day, right? And they're looking at us like little caterpillars waiting to become butterflies. And they're thinking, what's it going to be like? What's it going to be like? And so they watch me. How do I handle struggles? How do I handle stress? How do I handle good times? How do I handle, things that are unexpected? How do I handle whatever? But they're watching me. And so as much as important it is that I teach the curriculum well, it's also very important that you understand they're like a sponge absorbing you. They're watching you, and they're picking up things that they're going to use in their life that you may not even be aware of. And hopefully they're way more positive than negative things that they're going to take with them. Even the high school kids do this, by the way. They might look a little bit more casual about it because, they're too cool for school, but they might look at you, like, what's it going to be like? What's it going to be like? But they're watching. Same thing. They're watching you. How do I know this? Because I was a kid when this was happening. My dad would take me to these stores every once in a while. And it wasn't every week. It was like 2 or 3, 4 times maybe max. But we would go, and I was excited, and I'd go in, I'd watch them, and then we'd have our little conversations just because we were talking or I had questions. What's amazing is I didn't know until I became a teacher how many of those things had stuck in my life. And so I'm just going to give you a couple here real quickly. So for my dad, he was always, very, very focused on just being your best effort. He's always about hustle, right? Don't like when somebody in baseball gets a walk. Pete Rose, he loved Pete Rose. He ran to first base. He didn't jog. He ran. He had purpose. He showed people he was there to play. And that's what he'd always tell us is go in with purpose. Let people know you're there to get a job done, that you're ready to go. Never slack off, he'd always say, just keep going. And if you don't do it well the first time, do it again until you get it right. Or, especially if they're paying you, don't go in there and give your, just a good enough job. Give your very, very best so they know you gave your very best. And so that was something I always pushed in my classroom, right? Let my kids see me walk with purpose, owning my space, confidence, and comfortable in my space as a teacher so they could be confident and comfortable in their space as a student, right? Take time to build the team like my dad was doing with the coin, to have those timeouts, those huddles where he'd kind of talk to them, give them pep talks, and then individually talk about strategies that maybe they need to adjust privately so they could be working. But he had a doable plan. He had a shared mission. The More Money coin was their mission. More money for the store, more money for our department. So in that contest, we can say we're the best team of salespeople in this area or this region. And so, but he had a shared mission that bonded them all. So when it wasn't just random kids coming in, sitting down every day and then leaving, they were all connected, right? I talked about before how we talked about don't let the Farleys get you down. Don't let anybody else take you off your game. It's too important. Why? Because you're modeling to your kids. Last thing I'll say about this, and that is about the model, and then I'll talk about service briefly, and then I'll wrap this up. When you're in the classroom and your students are watching you, you never know, what they're going to walk away with. And so for me, when I realized I was a teacher and all these things went back to my dad, I was like, oh my gosh. I didn't even realize at the time. I was just a little sponge taking it in and things lock in your brain for some reason or you connect to it. And years later it comes out and it's like, oh my gosh. I want you to understand this is what education needs more of. We need to model the way. I hear teachers complain often about my district, my administration doesn't care, this. I heard that when I was teaching. I still hear it when I run into some of my teachers. Not all the teachers. There's a ton more good teachers than bad. I want to keep saying that. But I'm not going to ignore the fact that it exists. And so what I'm trying to get the message out is that I'd always say to people, model the way you want to be led. as a teacher in your building, if you're not being treated well, at least treat others the way you wish your administration would treat you. And if enough of you start doing that, you send a strong message to the principal that, oh, this is important to these people. I can tell because they're all doing it. And I got to get in tune with these people or get in step with these people, because they look foolish if they say, stop that. Stop treating each other with respect. I don't like that. Stop doing that. They have to get in step. And that goes for your district-wide administrators. Oftentimes, they come in and maybe they have a different agenda, especially superintendents with a business background, and that's all they're there for, not because they're bad people. That's what they were hired to do in some cases, but maybe they don't get the day-to-day about how important it is you build a team and you model the way and you help each other out, and it's something that you can start with your students, but you can also start and it spreads to your staff. This is the part about you being a leader outside of your classroom. And it can go on to beyond to others that you meet out in the profession when they say, what do you do? I'm a teacher. Wow, I talked to you. You seem like you're such a strong person and you're so positive and you're being a leader. So I want you to think of model the way. It goes in your classroom and it goes beyond. It goes outside your classroom as well. So keep that in mind on social media, and when you're out talking to others and you're upset, maybe that's a private conversation between you and another educator, but not someplace public where everybody else hears it and then they kind of get, there's those teachers complaining again or whatever. But it's most importantly, it's important for your students to see that these people are special people, like those teachers on the billboard I described, right? Like those Marines, they look strong, purpose-driven, right? And up for the challenge. And that's what I want people to see us as, all of us, collectively in our profession. So it starts with each one of us. So I hope you'll keep this in mind. All right, customer service is, I think I've been talking about it throughout all of these, just the effort you're making to do some of these things. That's customer service. But here are some things I want to share real quickly. It won't take long. Number one, I always thought of my customer service driven mindset was I was running a restaurant, okay? And so on my menu, there might be a ton of things on my menu, and you like maybe 30, 40, 50% of the things on my menu, but there's some things you don't like, right? Hopefully you like 90% of everything on my menu, but maybe there's a couple of things you don't like, but you like enough things that keeps bringing you back. You're like, oh, we got to go get this steak because they have the best at that restaurant. Oh, I like the way they do this at that restaurant. For me, I would go back to restaurants, not so much for the food, it was for the service. If I knew the people or they started to get to know you, and like some people, they'd always have our drink already on the table because they know I'm going to order iced tea when I go to lunch, right? And so it'd already be sitting there and they'd say, oh, go on in, make yourself at home. I already got your drinks ready for you. I'm like, oh my gosh, thanks. They'd ask, how you doing? What have you guys been up to? And we don't even know each other's names sometimes, but sometimes when we then get to know them. But customer service is, I want my parents, I want my students to feel like I'm running a restaurant, right? Here's my menu. You may not like everything I'm going to teach during the day. You may not like everything I do, but hopefully you'll like far more of the things on my menu and the way the service is in my classroom that you'll keep coming back and telling other people you want to have your kid in that room, right? And it's not a competition against any other teachers. It's just a compliment to you that if somebody says, you should put your kid in that room, man. We loved the service we got. We loved what we got out of Mr. Cecil's room, right? That means a lot. That means you're hitting the target, but I would never say it's about beating anybody else. I didn't look at it like that. But customer service, your business is doing well when your customer service is strong and people are coming back and back and back. And so definitely keep that in mind. Here are some things I would do on a regular basis or semi-regular basis to kind of just let them know I'm customer service driven. For example, I would go to specials with the kids sometimes. Like I'd go to gym and art with them, and I'd actually participate as a student. I would sit with them and I would do the project, and it was fun in art because they'd laugh how my skills weren't as good as some of theirs. Or in gym class, they couldn't believe I could run or I could, throw a ball or whatever. And so, but I would participate and follow along with the teacher. I wasn't helping the teacher. I was being a student just like them. And so, but I was modeling to the kids, again, what a good student or an engaged student looks like. So, but that was the reason. I'd sometimes eat in the lunchroom with them. Every once in a while, throughout the year, I'd go, hey, I'm going to come to lunch tomorrow, and I'm going to sit with this, I'll sit with a group, but then the next time I'm going to sit with another group. By the end of the year, I should have sat with everybody. But, and so when I'm in there, I can always, see what's going on, see how they say please and thank yous and model that to them. Or I can look at a student eating by themselves and I'm say, does that kid always eat by themselves? Why? Can't we sit with that kid somehow or ask that kid if we can, join them? Maybe they're lonely. So I would kind of, teach while we were eating lunch, but not make it sound like teaching. Every so often what I would do is I would go to, believe it or not, I would go to birthday parties. They would invite me and I would go, and that freaked them out. And then word gets out, Mr. Cecil will go to your party and he brings you a small gift. I wouldn't stay very long. My wife and I would go. We'd go in, immediately say happy birthday. The kids would get excited. We'd say, what are you guys doing? If there was a game, we'd jump in for about 5 minutes and we'd say, well, we got to go, but we just want to come by and wish you happy birthday, everybody. You guys have fun. And then we'd leave. But that was like, parents are like, you won't believe this teacher came to my kid's birthday party, and so sporting events, same things. On the weekends, I'd sometimes, or after school, I'd stick around or go see a sporting event. Maybe I'd just watch for a quarter or half and say, I got to go, but I wanted to check in on you, and so that meant a lot. That went a long way with parents and with the students, that I really do care, even outside of the school, even on my own time. Don't have to do it all the time. I didn't do it all the time, but enough that it shows that I really do care. And I did. It was fun to do it. I love seeing my kids outside of school and get a sense of them as what they're like, as just kids being kids, and for them to see me as somebody other than the teacher in the room trying to run the class all day long. So it's really cool. Birthday treat giveaways. I would give my students any treats that would come in from other students, because I would tell them I'm gaining weight, and I was, so I had to stop eating all the free birthday gifts, because I had quite a few kids want to come in and give me birthday gifts or birthday treats. And so what I would do is I would say, if your name isn't on the pad, I'll pull a stick. If your name comes out for that day and your name's not on the pad, you've been having a great day, you get the treat. And if I pull it again next time, you get the treat again. It's just random, but it gives you something to think about. One more reason why you want to pay attention during the day, because you never know when a birthday treat's going to come walking in that door near the end of the day. And so it helped me lose some weight, and it helped the kids stay engaged. And like, Mr. Cecil's fun. He does these things. He doesn't just throw the treat or keep it on his desk. Or there's times when I would eat the treat in front of them, and I would do a little birthday dance, and I would over-exaggerate, like, oh, this is the best cupcake ever. And some people say, that's rude. It was so hysterically funny. The kids would laugh, and they were just like, are you going to do that birthday dance you always do? I'm like, yeah, baby, it's a treat. Come on. And so I would either use it that way or the other way. I've talked about the incentives. I always had my kids working towards incentives. I would greet my kids every day at the beginning of the day. No matter, it's a new day. Every day's a fresh start. So as they were walking in, I always say, hey, good morning. Hope we have, ready for a great day. Give me knuckles, or, something like that. Or, hey, you got a haircut. I like that haircut. Is that new? Or is that a new outfit? That looks new. I try to find something to say to get them just casual talking. Let them know I'm there greeting them at the door because I'm excited to see them. And then same thing at the end of the day. I'd say, goodbye to my class. And then they would start to come out, and I would be there at the door knuckling them. Even if like Jimmy's there and he had a bad day today and he's like, he yelled at me earlier, and so he's upset about something. But I'd say, hey, Jimmy, give me knuckles, man. We're going to have a good day tomorrow, right? All right, have a good night tonight. Because I didn't want them to think that I hold a grudge or that it's going to come back tomorrow. They got to worry about it all night long. It's, hey, I'm pulling for you. I'm your coach. I'm your biggest cheerleader this year. So things like that. So I could go on and on and on, but I don't want to do that to you. So I'm going to stop here. I'm getting sad, man. I only have one episode left, and I already know what I'm going to talk about, so I hope you'll tune in for that. I've really enjoyed this podcast series, guys. I can't tell you how much. And again, I'm not a podcaster. This is all new to me, but I hope what I've done is to somehow influence you in a positive way that's going to help you enjoy your job more, and that you can use some of my strategies. You don't have to use all of them, but maybe there's one or two or three or whatever that you finding things you can use. That means the world to me, and so I'd love always to get your feedback. You can go, Bill Cecil at bestyouever.net is my email. I'd love to hear from you, what you think, where you're from, so I get an idea of who's out there. Any feedback, anything, even though it's the end, might help me for the next venture. But like I said, we have one more episode, and then I'll decide about what to do in the fall, if I'm going to add on to kind of like a season 2, but a different kind of version. Thank you again for listening. I do hope you'll come back for episode 30. And until then, just remember, best year ever. You have the power to make it happen.